Hello, welcome to La Excellence. Our first issue is Proposal for Amendment of Retrospective Taxation Law. Recently, government tried to introduce Taxation Laws Amendment Bill 2021. Through this particular bill, government is trying to remove the retrospective provisions in the income tax law that were introduced in 2012. In 2012, during that budget period, many changes were introduced in the taxation, especially in the direct taxes. In this context, recently Crane India issue, Vodafone issue, these have become very big controversies. And at the international level, India has faced setbacks. In this context, government is trying to remove those provisions which are related to retrospective taxation, and the taxes which are already collected under these provisions that shall be repaid but without interest. There are certain companies that have paid the retrospective taxes. Government will pay it back without paying the interest rate. In this context, taxpayers, they have to drop all the charges that they have filed against the government, and they have to promise that they won't make any demands for damages or costs. Indirectly, we are referring this to Crane India case and Vodafone case. We are ready to pay back the money, that is tax money that they have paid without the interest. So in this context, in future, we have to remember this as an example. Every country, yes, it has the taxation right, but these taxation rights, they have to adhere to the international laws. Next issue is Iran-India relationship. Recently, our External Affairs Minister met the newly elected President of Iran. There are certain issues, bilateral issues between India and Iran, which include India has cancelled the oil imports from Iran due to USA's sanctions, and progress in Chabahar port and Chabahar railway line, it is very slow. And Iran's comments on Kashmir issue over the past few years, these three have become major thorny issues between the two countries. In this context, now this gesture by our External Affairs Minister shows that India wants to continue its balance of ties between Iran and other West Asian countries such as Saudi Arabia, Israel, etc. Because Saudi Arabia, Israel, they are against Iran. We want to have good relations with Saudi Arabia as well as Israel along with Iran. So this is a balanced strategy. We want to follow it that now. Next is IIT Dropouts. Recently, Ministry of Education has said that nearly 63% of undergraduate dropouts at top 7 IITs in the past 5 years are from reserved categories. Out of them, 40% of dropouts were from scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. And in some institutions, in some IITs, SC/ST share, dropout share is high as 72%. In this context, government has to take the proactive measures, especially bridge courses, etc. It has to address the root cause. Why? Only from few sections the dropouts are more. This concern has to be addressed by the government. Next issue is Earth Observation Satellite 3, EOS-03. This will be carried on 14th flight of GSLV, that is GSLV F10. It will place this Earth Observation Satellite in the Geosynchronous Orbit, GSO. It is the state-of-the-art satellite which provides the real-time monitoring of data. See, we have Earth observation satellites which are placed in the low Earth orbit, and some Earth observation satellites can be placed in the geosynchronous or geostationary orbit. When we want continuous form of communication or real-time monitoring, then we place the satellite in the geostationary orbit. In this context, this satellite, especially EOS-03, will be helpful in real-time monitoring of natural disasters, water bodies, crops, forests, etc. That means it provides the real-time weather monitoring data. Next issue is Agalega Islands. This is part of Mauritius. In 2015, when our Prime Minister visited this particular country, Mauritius, we have made an agreement to build 3-kilometer airstrip and a jetty near this particular island. Many have said that this Mauritius country has given the military base for India. But recently, Mauritius has denied that particular report, which said that India is building the military base in this Agalega Island. It said We have not formalized it yet. We have not given it for the military base. That's the clarity given from Mauritius. And similarly, this particular report has highlighted Chagos archipelago issue. Chagos archipelago is a controversial archipelago between UK and Mauritius. UK says it's theirs. Mauritius says it's this island group belongs to Mauritius. In this context, UK has given certain islands like Diogo Garcia Islands, etc., as a rent to USA. Recently, UK renewed the rental contract with USA. USA has a military base in the Indian Ocean region in the Diogo Garcia Island, which is part of Chagos archipelago. We have to remember that this is a controversial archipelago between UK and Mauritius. Next issue is notice on investment rules violation to Flipkart. Flipkart and Amazon, these are two primary e-commerce companies in India. ED has given notices to both these companies, Flipkart and Amazon.com, because there are foreign investment laws. We have Foreign Exchange Management Law, a Foreign Exchange Management Act. So ED has complained that these multi-brand retail e-commerce companies, when they made agreements with, let's say, Flipkart with Walmart, when they made this investment, they have flouted the foreign investment law. That is the allegation. So ED has given certain time to these companies, and within this time period they have to prove that the investment that they have gone for is legal only. Next, let us understand the editorial part. Tamil Nadu Gaming Act 1930. Under this particular act, few apps were banned by the Tamil Nadu government, and few people went to Madras High Court. And Madras High Court has invoked this particular principle called lack of proportionality. There is a principle called principle of proportionality. That means government can ban and regulate any activity, but it should see the proportionality of its measure. In this context, banning something which could have been regulated is seen as lack of proportionate to the measures. In this context, the amendment to Tamil Nadu Gaming Act 1930 has been struck down by Madras High Court. It has found the prohibition of certain games under this particular act is unreasonable, because games which come under predominantly skill type, they are also banned. They are also banned by under this particular act. That's why Madras High Court said this violated the principle of proportionality. That's why we are striking this down. Next one is pandemic distress. Recently, American President Joe Biden and Director of CDC, Center for Disease Control, CDC has warned that COVID crisis in USA is becoming pandemic of unvaccinated. They have multiple types of vaccines available, but then many people are refusing to take the vaccines. That means huge scale vaccine hesitancy and vaccine distress is there in that country. In this context, this particular condition is not unique to USA. In many countries this exists, but in USA there are multiple vaccines that are available for the people. So this distrust and vaccine hesitancy needs to be addressed, because vaccines are important. Vaccines, they prevent the mortality. Vaccines, they prevent severe hospitalization. They prevent the cost or burden on the healthcare system. In this context, building proper awareness, persuading the people, providing access to the vaccines, these should be considered as the way forward. Next issue is Assam Mizoram issue. Assam, Mizoram, these two states, they share 164 kilometers volatile border. Mizoram government has recently claimed that 209 square mile stretch in the inner reserve forest area that is notified in the year 1975 belongs to it. But Assam says, according to 1933 Survey of India report, this particular stretch belongs to it. That has led to recent controversy. In this context, both the states have agreed to provide for a permanent solution for this. Satellite-based imaging for permanent border demarcation will be used. Historical knowledge, sensitivity of the people, accommodating the spirit of negotiation and dialogue, these should be considered as the way forward. Next issue is India-Nepal flood management. There are many rivers which originate in Nepal, Himalayan rivers. They flow into India, such as Kosi, Gandak, Buri Gandak, Bagmati. Likewise, we have many rivers that flow from Nepal to India, which carry huge sediment load plus water. In this context, they cause floods to Bihar. The two countries, India and Nepal, they have to re-establish water cooperation as a common cause. In 1950s, we had many agreements to curtail floods or to mitigate the flood impact. Same spirit needs to be followed now. And structural and non-structural measures, structural changes like infrastructure augmentation for dams and reservoirs, building retention basins, embankments and channel improvements, and non-structural measures such as floodplain management, flood forecasting and warning, flood insurance, financial compensation. These needs to be brought in. Then only we can combinedly, cooperatively mitigate the impact of floods, especially now in the context of global warming and climate change. Floods and their impact has increased enormously. So that's why flood management, integrated flood management is important. Finally, government schools and working. Total 51% of students are studying in government schools and nearly 10% in the aided schools. In this context, encouraging the infrastructure and enhancing the government school infrastructure reduces the divides, educational divides. So that's why focus should be on infrastructure building, focus should be on teacher accountability. There are many schemes, for example, Samagra Siksha Abhiyan, under which there are 6 or 7 schemes. So skill development programs, all these things needs to be integrated, and government schools need to be made much more functional, because affordable education, quality education makes the change in the entire society. AP model of Nadu in augmenting the infrastructure needs to be, that can be considered as a case study. These are the issues. Thank you very much. All the very best.